What is up, VeVe fam? If you're into the OMI tokens, then you're in for a treat because today we have Hello K, a very special guest with over 50 million OMI tokens. K's been following the team for many years, so he has so many incredible stories and knowledge. In this interview, we'll be talking about how you can take advantage of the OMI Utility Program to get more land with less money, the Ecomi credit card that not many people know about, and K's expectation for OMI in 2023 and 2025. It's very exciting. I learned a ton in this interview, and I'm sure you will too. Let's get to it. So my first question for you is, now that the new version of the article is out, what are your impressions? And so that's the first question. And maybe you can tell me a few things that you really like and a few things that you dislike or you think they can improve from reading the OUP article.
Yeah. So when it first came out, I was out, so I didn't get to have like a proper look at it. But then afterwards, I had a listen like one time, and then I read through the Ecomi portal that's on Notion. And a lot of the stuff that's in there, I think it's really good for long-term, long-term user retention and growth. Because the tricky part of these kind of programs is, and a lot of people, maybe they think, oh, it doesn't take very long to write, like why did it take so long? But the people that worked on this, so there was like, from my knowledge, there were three main people that had significant input on this article, right? Or not article, this whole portal. And the challenge is to make it so that it incentivizes people to go out and get OMI to use, but also it doesn't kind of overpower OMI holders as opposed to VeVe collectors, right? You need that balance. And it's always a tricky thing because you're designing it with a lot of assumptions based on, how many OMI holders do you have, how many VeVe collectors, how many people are both, how much do they hold, etc., etc. And so some of the things that I like personally is, to me, it felt very balanced. Like I could tell, not just I could tell, I know that they did many iterations of it. And if you have a look at the very first OUP that was designed by someone who doesn't work for the company anymore, but this new version is like way better than that first version that came out. And that first version was actually leaked. It wasn't like officially released or anything. And you would basically use OMI to buy ranks, and you would like literally just spend OMI to level up. And those levels would give you like, ridiculous like kind of VeVe benefits, let's call it that. But I think the whole staking system, the kind of graduations of tiers with the rewards, I think the rewards that you're getting are pretty fair on the lower tiers. So, the staking side, that's what I'm really happy with, and integrating that with the token system. But in terms of like the higher tiers, I think there's room for improvement because I covered this quite recently, right? And I asked them this live on the AMA, is if you're on tier 3, I believe that costs, I believe it's $10,000 worth of OMI to stake to get to tier 3, right? And you get one golden ticket, you get one silver ticket, and you get 80 bronze tickets, or 100, something like that. Now, that's with $10,000 worth of OMI. If you had $20,000 and you went for tier 4, you would still only get one golden ticket, you would still only get one silver ticket, and you'd get like 160 bronze tickets or 200 bronze tickets. I can't remember, somewhere around there, right? But you also get the ultra rare collectible. Now, unless that collectible is really good, I don't see how many people would want to spend twice as, or not spend, but stake twice as much OMI for an ultra rare collectible. Like, what they could do is, if they have like friends or family, they could spread their OMI across 2 accounts. So rather than staking 20,000 for tier 4 on one account, they could have 10,000 on 2 different accounts and have both of them at tier 3. So what would they get if they had 2 tier 3 accounts? They would get 2 golden tickets, 2 silver tickets, and like 160 or 200 whatever bronze tickets, right? Now, but they wouldn't get the ultra rare collectible. So now you have to ask yourself, what is better? Having 2 golden tickets and 2 silver tickets and the rest of the stuff, or having only 1 golden ticket but the ultra rare collectible? Now, because the golden ticket also gives you like the entitlement to the VeVeVerse land, you get twice as much land. Now, to me, I think having 2 plots of land, as well as, you know, all of those extra bronze and silver tickets, is better than one ultra rare collectible, unless that collectible is really, really good.
Yeah.
Um, so I think if they work a bit more on incentivizing the higher tiers, because for me, as someone who has, over $50,000 worth of OMI, I don't, or was it over 40,000 for the top tier? I don't feel like I want to stake more than 10,000. I think 10,000 is like the best kind of dollar value that you're getting. I think it's twice as much for like an ultra rare collectible. It just doesn't excite me. So I think, yeah, the higher tiers, they can work on it, but they've definitely balanced the whole OUP to the point where it's not like overpowering the MCP. But it works quite well with the MCP. And through that, I think what they're going to get is a lot more people who don't have OMI, who just collect VeVe stuff, who maybe don't have much experience of crypto. They're going to want to get some OMI. And one of the really cool things is, even if you're not like crypto savvy, the roadmap also includes the ability to buy OMI through the web app. And
Right.
having that ability to just click a button and get OMI, as opposed to going, send some money to Coinbase, convert it to USDT, send it to Bitforex, swap it for OMI, send it back to your MetaMask, bridge it from layer 1 to layer 2. Like that is such a long process, and most people don't understand it. It's easier just to click buy, get the OMI in your VeVe app, done. No, no more than that. So yeah, I think they're definitely streamlining the app through the OUP to make it more accessible to the average VeVe user or new VeVe users who might not be familiar with crypto. But for people who have been around for a while, for people who do have a lot of OMI, I think they still do need to work on incentivizing those people to get more involved.
Right. I did watch that video as a part of my research, and I went through the majority of your tweets as well. I think you have a very valid point. Also, when I was reading through the ability to fast track to different tiers, I think I found that if you stay on level 4 or tier 4 for the whole year, let's just say you can start staking in January 2024, right?
Mm.
So you stay throughout 2024, and then you go up to tier 5 in January 2025.
Yeah.
Then I think you get some rewards for that tier progression. And that reward going from tier 4 to tier 5 is like 2 golden tickets or something like that. But I have to double check my math. But I
Yeah.
think if I were to have the OMI to stay on tier 4 and then progress to tier 5, I might get more land than I would have had if I were to stay on tier 5 for the whole year, if that makes sense.
Mm.
I think there are multiple ways to gamify that OUP experience, and I'm very glad that you pointed that out, that you can give a certain amount of OMI to your family or friends, whatever, and you guys can share the benefits. So I know that you are you have a pretty big OMI bag, so you probably qualify for tier 5. And I know one thing that many people were saying is the incentive of the higher tier might not be enough to keep the whales in the ecosystem, like to have the whales stake their OMI. So as a guy with lots of OMI who qualify for the highest tier, do you think that there should be a tier 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or are you satisfied with what we have right now? And one idea that I came up with when somebody mentioned, oh, we should have a tier that is like $100,000 or even $200,000. But the thing about those higher tiers is that if you unstake, let's just say tier 8, $200,000, you have to pay 10% of that. So if you were to unstake your OMI at tier 8, for example, then you have to pay $20,000 in OMI, which is a huge amount. So that's where I was kind of like confused whether a higher tier would benefit those who have a lot of OMI or not. And I would love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. There's a couple of ways they can approach this. They could just choose to keep making more and more tiers. Or what they could do is potentially look at ways of enhancing the existing tiers.
Right.
And so, adding, so one example, right? From the previous OUP article, which apparently a lot of the stuff, or pretty much everything from the previous article, is translated over to this new version. It's just they didn't include a lot of it because there's already so much there. They didn't want to overload people with too much information. So one of the things is renting, right? So if you want to rent out your collectibles, you have to be in tier 3. So, you know, that does incentivize people to get to tier 3. But if they have other perks that they can add to augment the existing tiers, which, you know, require the maybe the use of OMI or some additional form of staking of OMI, then I think that would definitely help. So for example, once you're at tier 3, if for every, you know, let's say $1,000 worth of OMI that you stake, you get an extra chance at, you know, some unique experience in the VeVeVerse, right? So let's say the VeVeVerse opens up the ability to, let's say, I don't know, like hunt for Cryptkins. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you get given like I don't know, like something like a Pokeball, right? Like I don't know what you can hunt Cryptkins with, but like something to catch them. And let's say you get like 5 of them, 5 of the things to catch Cryptkins. And at tier 3, for every $1,000 of OMI that you stake, you get an extra, you know, like Pokeball or capture device. And so if I've got a lot of OMI and I'm like, oh, you know, this is kind of a cool experience, you know, I get some like, you know, I get something from it as well. And if my OMI is just sat there doing nothing, I would happily, you know, stake an additional, you know, 10,000, 15,000 just to like, you know, get like a nice bag of exclusive, you know, VeVeVerse only Cryptkins. I'd be fine to do that. And so things like that, like you said, gamifying through the OUP, I think that's great. And, you know, on a previous interview that Dan Crovers did with Wormhole Labs, I asked him the question of, will there be opportunities to burn OMI through games in the VeVeVerse? And Dan just straight up said, absolutely. So that to me, you know, implies that that's kind of already on the roadmap anyway. But through augmenting existing OUP tiers, that would be enough for me, at least, to kind of incentivize me to stake more OMI, as opposed to, you know, and I would even like, even if they had an option to, let's say, burn, if it was like, you know, a fair amount, I would be happy to like burn it for like these experiences as well. So yeah, that's I think they can just do higher tiers, but I think it'll be more fun to augment the existing tiers, so you know people don't get like too priced out as well.
Yeah. How do you justify spending your OMI? And the reason why I asked that question is I have my bag of OMI, which is very small compared to you guys. And because it is small, I don't want to spend it on anything because I think OMI is undervalued. And I think OMI is it's my assets, right?
Yeah.
If I were to spend it, then I know that I am contributing to the burning of OMI and the deflation of the token, but at the same time I'm losing that profit opportunity. So how do you justify spending OMI for whatever, you know, reasons in VeVe?
Yeah, I mean it's the same for everything that I spend on. It's all about kind of a calculated I guess you could say a calculated risk, a calculated play, you know, opportunity cost. So if I'm going to spend something, right, if the thing I'm spending it for, it needs to do, to simplify, it needs to do one of two things. Either it needs to be really enjoyable and fun and something that, you know, I gain value from, or it needs to be something that I see more potential profitability in than what
Right.
I'm currently swapping it for. So if, say, you know, there's, I don't know, like a 1 of 100 edition of some exclusive Iron Man, for example, because I'm an Iron Man fan, and you know, someone lists it on the secondary market for OMI, and so I've got some OMI, and I look at the Iron Man, and I'm like, okay, I really want the Iron Man, and if I spend some of my OMI right now, I get the OUP burn points, but I get the Iron Man as well. And because it's scarce and Iron Man's a cool character, I think, you know, it's going to
Right.
retain value. It's going to, you know, most likely become more desirable in the future because there are a lot of Iron Man fans. So that's something I would be incentivized to spend some OMI on. Now, what I could also do is if I don't have the gems and if they've got, the ability to purchase OMI on the app, I would still, even if it costs me like a little bit more than just using gems, because there is that OMI buyer fee as well, I would happily go out and get the OMI because I get the burn points. But on top of that, I don't have to spend the OMI that I am holding right now. I'm buying OMI from the market directly. And that process where people have that decision to make, like, do I use gems or do I use OMI? And if they're incentivized enough to use OMI, all of that secondary volume that we're seeing daily, a lot of it's going to start coming from the OMI circulating supply. And so, yeah, also, if my OUP tier is high, then I pay reduced fees when I transact in OMI anyway. So, it's not too big of a difference. So in that case, yeah, I can justify it. But for me personally, I would only be using OMI regularly on big grails because I'm at a point where I'm not like collecting everything anymore. I used to collect everything. I had there was a point where I had the entire season 2 set. And I had like most of season 1 as well. And then I think it was after the lucky drop, because I missed that drop. That's when my set kind of got broken. And from that day, I was like, oh, you know what? I just can't be bothered to put in the effort of like having every single set because it's just too much work. But yeah, like I would only be using my OMI on like very specific key pieces anyway. So that kind of falls a bit in line with the, which ones do I think retain value or grow in value faster than OMI would? Because OMI will eventually, start to level off until that burn just keeps it growing at a very kind of linear rate, not like an exponential rate anymore.
I saw that you bought 11 million OMI yesterday or something, right?
Oh yeah, yesterday, yeah. The price was too good.
Yeah.
It was at 0009. No, 0098, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, congrats. And I know that you are a software engineer, and Ree mentioned in the Telegram AMA that he expects all the features to be completed within the next 12 months.
Yeah.
So let's just give them 13 and a half months. Let's just give them the second week of November, December, and let's just say that everything will be completed by Christmas next year, 2023, and we can start staking in January 2024.
Yeah.
Okay. So as somebody who works in tech, do you think with the complexity of the program and how small the team is, do you think that they can get everything done by Christmas 2024? Or if there's a delay, what would that delay be? Like how long will that delay be?
So I always say, okay, so short answer is I personally, and I don't want Reese to like hate me for this, I think they won't hit it on that deadline. I mean, they might hit certain parts. But the whole thing, I think it'll probably, I always try and factor in uncertainty because if something's going to take 12 months, probably say it will take 1.5 times as long. So 18 months is what I would go for. So in terms of like things that go wrong, right? So there are things that can go wrong, but there are things that can change. So in terms of things that can go wrong, one of the most common problems that happens, especially in smaller teams, is, and this is what happened to VeVe quite recently, right? Is if you have someone who knows the product really well on the tech side, like they know all the code, they know, how everything's connected up. That one person leaves, it takes about 6 months for a new person just to understand what's going on. On average, it will take them 6 months before they even become useful. And so imagine that, like, one person leaves, you have to push everything forward or push certain parts of your platform forward by 6 months. And so if the devs who are like most knowledgeable on the OEP, if even one of them leaves, then that's going to delay things a lot. So their CTO, he left because he had a baby. Well, his wife had a baby, but he wants to look after the baby. So they got a new CTO back in January of this year. And that CTO has been getting onboarded. And now, very recently, like maybe a couple of months ago, around about when we had Decon London, that's when, they were kind of restructuring the kind of tech side of the company. They got the product manager as well in to like work with the tech side and the business side to kind of, map out the features and timelines and everything. So now they're way more organized. But that's always one risk is if one person leaves, which has a big impact on a small team. If it's a big team and one person leaves, it doesn't have as much of an impact. But obviously a bigger team, like that's only really necessary when you're like a very, very kind of, big scaled up product, which at the moment VeVe isn't yet, but once VeVeVerse rolls out, it will be. That's my belief anyway. Things that can slow them down that, isn't necessarily something going wrong, and this is what VeVe's always done, is when something better comes along. So this is basically the whole purpose of like why the VeVe app is the VeVe app. So initially the VeVe app was a platform for 2D collectibles. A lot of people might not know that, but if you go back and look at the very early kind of versions of the app and the medium and everything, it was designed for 2D collectibles. And the AR aspect, that was something that they pivoted to later on. So the original release date of the app was supposed to be start of 2019. And the actual release date of the app was towards the end of 2020. So it took them a year and a half of delays to release the app. So you can imagine there were people who were waiting, start of 2019, the VeVe app's coming out. And they said it's delayed. And they delayed it for a year and a half. You can imagine how frustrated people were. And a lot of people, I'm sure, they kind of gave up and left. And now they're probably regretting it. But the same thing applies to Cash Out, right? So when VeVe initially was working on Cash Out, they had a new partner, which was better because then they could do quicker cash outs, but also crypto as well as fiat cash out. The original plan was just only fiat cash out, and it would have taken longer as well with the old partner. So because they delayed cash out to kind of make it better, I think that's justified if you want to delay things to make them better when you roll them out. And yeah, it's like the same thing that applies to everything. Like most of the time they're delaying things is because they want to make it better. And that happens as a result of new technology. And I think what really caused them to do that was because they were so early to the space, there was no infrastructure in place to support NFTs. So IMX didn't exist, for example, when VeVe came out. So they had to basically create their own NFT standard on Go chain, like Go 20. Go was it 721? That was created specifically for VeVe. Like it didn't exist before.
Wow.
So if they had waited for some new technology to come along, such as IMX, they could have launched on IMX from day one, and they wouldn't have had to do the migration. They wouldn't have to do this whole kind of, metadata transfer. It would have been a lot smoother. But then they wouldn't have been as early as they were. So there's like a pros and cons there, right? Do you want to be really early, but then you're so early that you arrive before all the infrastructure is in place, or do you want to wait a bit for that infrastructure to be in place so that you get something known as, like the what's it called? So there's early mover advantage, and then there's like the other one where you're like second place, but
you leapfrog in terms of technology.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a term for it, but it's just slipped my mind. But yeah, you get the idea. So I think they can have delays, and they probably will have delays. Regulations also, that kind of affects them. That will be a bad thing. I know regulations has delayed a lot of things this year. But as far as the competency and leadership and, conviction of the team, like the ambition, like that's fine. Like no questions. Like they're not going to, do shady things and cover it up and all of that stuff like that we've been seeing, with FTX and Luna and Celsius and all these other projects. Like I'm not worried about that because they've been audited multiple times. They've been very careful. Just their transparency with everything is good enough for me. So I don't have to worry about that. At least the only things that are going to get in their way is just external factors, which has been kind of the thing this whole year, pretty much.
Yo, I love that answer. And yeah, that was one of the best explanation I've ever heard regarding potential reasons for delays. I also work in tech. I'm not a software engineer, but I understand that, when your team is small, like my team had only less than 5 people, and we lost a core team member Q1 of this year.
Yeah.
And because that guy, he's awesome, and he's been working with me and my manager and some other folks. He's been with the company for so long. He's like an extremely valuable resource. And then after he left, we spent months looking for a new candidate that has to be good enough, not just any candidate, right?
Yeah.
And then when that new candidate finally came in a few months later, so we lost that few months of progress because less people have to do more work essentially. After that new candidate came in, we had to onboard her, and that takes a few months because in tech, as you can understand, there are so many moving parts. There's so many teams that you have to learn and to be familiar with the product as well. And in VeVe, people think of VeVe as one product, but it's not really, right? Like VeVe is one product, but there's so many functionalities and features within it that that just makes it very complicated. So I love that answer, and I do agree with you that we should set a lower expectation, just in case things like that can happen. Which I bet you that will happen for sure. Like they will lose somebody, or like regulation change, or anything like that. Yeah, I love that answer. So we have, let's just say, 18 months from now until the final step of OUP is implemented. What will be your strategy from now until then?
So my strategy is just to continue stacking OMI. My ultimate goal is 100 mil. That's just it's just a nice round number. And I got something. I don't know where did I put it? Somewhere here. Oh yes, here we go. Yeah. So I got this from Dive Jedi.
Nice.
Let me put it here. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like it's got 100 on it.
Yeah.
And like signed it at the back. He's like he's like put one of one there. And like
That's awesome.
Omi Homie Decon London. So this is like it's like a real like currency, but it's like the certificate for trying to get to 100 mil Omi. That's why I've made it anyway. But yeah, I'm on 55 mil right now. The last week was really, really good for OMI accumulation because I had so I made a video like 3 months ago where I was selling a lot of my stuff on VeVe because of the incoming like macroeconomic issues that were happening. Because I did a full breakdown of, how much inflation had gone up by and how little rates had increased by. So I was predicting rates were going to go up a lot, and that's exactly what happened. Like since that video, rates have like literally every week they've been increasing rates, and that's been having a negative impact. But then also, like the whole Ukraine thing, Russia stuff, that's had a bit of an effect as well. But everything that I was saying, like CPI, I think CPI came out today. Is it today? I can't remember.
Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I didn't have oh wait, inflation wasn't as bad as they thought.
Yeah.
So the rates have been, they've been having an effect. So that might kind of give people a bit of relief. But, like I did sell of a lot of my collection. So I've got, I've got enough gems there to kind of slowly dollar cost average my way up to 100 mil. And then my plan is ultimately once I've got like enough OMI, I can then buy back certain key pieces using OMI. And I believe that, a lot of these key pieces, they're going to be more fairly valued once MCP and OUP is in place. And I'm fine with that because when they're more fairly valued, that's more transaction fees and more volume. If there's more transaction fees and more volume, there's more OMI burn. If there's more OMI burn, then there's more demand on OMI. And if there's let's say, a more active market, that's what attracts new people. If the market has no liquidity, like it's an app with no liquidity, people just aren't going to care. and more new people that come in, those people are going to want to stake OMI to get the best benefits, and then that's how they retain that growth. So that's partly why I'm a big believer in OMI. Is it's tied to an app, and it's tied to the most successful app in the history of crypto. Like there has not been a more successful app than VeVe, and people keep forgetting that. It was literally at one point it was grossing more than Disney Plus, I think. Yeah, it was, yeah. And I was like, that is stupid. Like for a random startup that no one's heard of to just, and it's in crypto as well, like NFTs as well. And they're grossing more than like Disney Plus, sorry. That's definitely got a lot of people's attention. So I would say, yeah, my strategy is just to kind of dollar cost average throughout the year. I've got enough enough liquidity on VeVe where I can continue doing that. But the past week was really good for stacking OMI because I was holding a bag of ETH. I had like some fiat on like different platforms like Warner Brothers Web3, DC NFT Marketplace, and I just left my fiat there because I'm like, I'm gonna wait for a good opportunity, and then that opportunity arrived yesterday, and I was like, this is what I've been waiting for, and I just kind of went all in. Well, not all in. I've left my liquidity on VeVe, but I am a believer that Bitcoin is probably going to go down to around 13, 14K. And when that happens, I think we're going to see, triple zeros, probably, 0008, 0007 potentially. And when that happens, that's when I'm going to look to utilize more of my liquidity, from VeVe or elsewhere. I'm just going to continue being patient. If it doesn't happen, then that's fine. The price goes up, everyone's happy. It doesn't really matter. It's all about like, being prepared for both scenarios, in my opinion.
What makes you think that Bitcoin will go lower? I would love to have that analysis because I don't know too much about analyzing the market and especially crypto. And the second part to that question is, if you were to expect crypto or Bitcoin and OMI to go lower, why don't you hold off buying OMI until then?
Yeah. So why do I think Bitcoin's going to go lower? So the thing is, I try and adopt a mindset similar to what a lot of like this kind of classic CEO mindset where you're not expected to be the best at everything, but you should hire people who are good at things that you can then ask the questions to, right? And so I try and keep my inner circle like as knowledgeable as possible. So I talk, one-to-one and in a group, directly with people like Brock, the Bread Cat guy, Omi the Clown, Dr. Prophet, God's Entry. He's someone I talk to a lot. And so I try and kind of learn as much as I can, especially from people who are experts in or let's say they've got a very good track record in trading and technical analysis, as well as people who I kind of can learn more about the fundamental side as well. And so I believe, based off just all of my discussions, is it makes sense for Bitcoin to go lower, just because we have the continuing macroeconomic pressures that aren't going to slow down. It takes a while for, a recession to subside, and the debt across, like sovereign debt has been increasing like every year. It hasn't really been decreasing. And so people's purchasing power, it does depreciate. So people are going to need more of their savings to spend on daily necessities. And, from that, I can kind of start to extrapolate, there's going to be less volume of money flowing into crypto. Now, what did help crypto a lot was institutional money. Like when that came in, like through MicroStrategy, even Tesla buying a lot of Bitcoin, and that kind of, I guess, made a lot of smaller players kind of FOMO in as well, like that need to have Bitcoin on your balance sheet. That really pumped up the market. So I think, we're most likely going to hit that 13, 14K just based off of technicals as well as fundamentals. Now, why would I wait? And that's because, even though I believe we probably will, I need to be prepared for if we don't. And the only way to do that is, historically, dollar cost averaging has always been over a long time frame, it's always been probably the best strategy, right? And so for me, I tend to buy more if what I'm buying is lowering my average cost. If my average cost doesn't really get lowered much, so let's say the price of OMI is the same as my average cost or higher, I'd probably just hold the fiat and wait. So that way, every time I buy, I'm buying, and my average cost that I spend on OMI is being lowered each time. So yeah, I just like to be prepared, even if it's like against my personal beliefs. Historically, I've just trained myself to, not go all in at one price point. I just buy a fixed amount, or sometimes I buy a bit more. Like yesterday, I went kind of ham. I bought more than I usually would, but that was just because the prices were too good. But yeah, I feel that dollar cost averaging is, if you don't want to like play the trading game, then it's probably, in my opinion, one of the safest ways to, accumulate anything.
Yeah. So the reason why I was very, very excited to have you on today is because I had, so you are my 10th guest, and the previous 9 had really strong belief in the NFTs, and particularly the IPs, simply because, we all know that Disney and DC Disney and DC have the right to take their NFTs off VeVe, to their own platform or whatever. I'm not saying that will happen, but that is a possibility. So those guys invested in the NFTs because they believe that these IPs have been around for almost a century now. So they have that credibility, they have that foundation, they have the business success to build on these NFTs. And if anything were to happen with VeVe, they still have the IPs as the investment. But you are on the, I'm not saying opposite side, but you are very different than my previous 9 guests, in the sense that you are really into OMI. And I was that way when I first started, because I thought that, well, during a gold rush, you can be the guys who go look for the gold and have a lower chance of getting the gold. But if you were to hit it, then you'll be extremely rich, right? And that's the goal, is basically the NFTs here. Or you can be the guy who sells the shovels and the tents and the equipments. And regardless of, if this guy gets the goal, or this guy doesn't get, or the other guy doesn't get the goal, you will sell equipments regardless.
Yeah.
And that's OMI, because OMI is the foundation for everything that is happening with VeVe. I was that way since the beginning. I am a little bit more balanced now, even though I'm still heavier on OMI. So what gave you that mindset that, hey, maybe I should allocate more money, well, the majority of my money, to OMI instead of the IPs/NFTs?
Yeah. So there was a couple of points to that. So when I got into crypto in 2016, I hadn't really invested in anything before. I never really bought stocks. It was like my first time kind of investing in things. And I learned a lot of important lessons, which some people, they kind of have to go through the experience. They can't just be told it. They have to experience it for themselves. And one of those was, because crypto was very new, like, yeah, Bitcoin was around for a while before that, but in terms of like the actual like widespread kind of exchanges and things, like, people were still using Poloniex. Coinbase had kind of like, it was still like not many people using it. And so, yeah, when that crypto crash happened in end of 2017, start of 2018, like that and things went like, the crash that we had just now is nothing compared to like what happened then. Like every day you'd wake up and it would be like minus 50%, the next day,
Wow.
minus 50%, next day, minus 50%. Like literally you were losing half your money every day. And yeah, that kind of showed me that when there's a brand new asset, that hasn't got a lot of, because there weren't very many people in crypto compared to now back then either. You know, you don't need a lot of money to be pulled out for the prices to just start swinging, you know, like erratically, that like either downwards or upwards. And NFTs gave me the exact same feeling because it's a new asset class, and it's extremely volatile. Like we've seen, I mean, we've already seen crazy prices on VeVe, like, you know, well, as like, you know, 50K one day and now it's down to like 3K. Like, you know, that's insane. Let's say, you know, even outside of VeVe, right? A lot of OpenSea NFTs, we've seen, you know, things go from like 10 ETH down to like 0.2 ETH. Like it happens all the time. And so any risk asset you don't want to be holding in a recession. So because I said that, people would probably ask, oh, so why are you holding OMI throughout an economic recession? And that's because crypto and OMI, they've been around a lot longer than the NFTs, right? And OMI's already survived a bear market before. And not just the bear market, OMI survived a lawsuit. It's survived an entire company restructure. It's survived, you know, it survived when VeVe and Ecomi were like basically non-existential. Like
Wow.
they were irrelevant at the time. They were very small. They had nothing. And OMI survived from back then. And this was before Disney partnerships and all that. Now we're at a phase where VeVe has a large user base. You know, even right now, the daily volume is crazy, like multiple six figures, even seven figures. And they've got all these partnerships. So they are much, much better off now than they were, you know, 4 years ago. But OMI still survived that period from 4 years ago. And the market crash 4 years ago was a lot worse than it is now as well. So, well, you know, the one right now probably will get worse in my opinion. But, you know, right now, OMI's still kind of relatively chilling. So because the data shows that OMI has survived these market conditions, it's less risky for me because it's survived it once before. Whereas the NFT market, so not VeVe, but like in general, because it's so new, it doesn't really have that data that I can trust. And because it's quite a lot of money, and I'm at a stage of my life where I can't afford to like lose massive amounts of money through like, you know, speculative gambling. Like if I know something guaranteed, I'd rather stick with it, or, you know, not guaranteed, but like more guaranteed, you know, less risky. I'd rather go with that option. So yeah, that's partly why I'm like more in like the OMI side. And also I made a point that, you know, and I made this point a long time ago, to justify OMI versus like, you know, just let's say VeVe, right? Is I was looking at the original tokenomics and I was like, okay, OMI is deflationary. So every day there's going to be less OMI than there was yesterday. Whereas the company, in order to scale, they're going to have to do more drops and, you know, more kind of asset releases, like, you know, accessories, land, etc. That's their business model. They sell you things. And so in a way, the number of NFTs on VeVe is always going to be going up. So in a way, you can think of it as the NFTs are inflationary. Now, obviously, most people eventually are going to start to realize, oh, only very specific NFTs like Grail pieces and, you know, significant releases, those ones are the ones that are going to hold value, even in the face of dilution. But that's a bit of a that's like another layer of work, right? Is you need to be like knowledgeable across multiple IPs. You know, you need to, you know, also trust that the fans that this IP attracts, like they're going to be interested in NFTs. You know, like for example, Barbie, I think they did NFTs recently, and their fan base hates NFTs. Like it didn't do very well. Same with Lamborghini. Lamborghini did NFTs recently, and you'd expect that to do really well, but they didn't really sell much. I reckon if they did it through VeVe, they would have done much better because the audience is there. But, you know, like I would say people do need to be aware that not everything in VeVe is going to moon because they're going to keep dropping more and more NFTs every day. Whereas if you want to play that game because you're really good at kind of, you know, identifying, you know, significant IP and characters and things, then, you know, then that's probably better for you. But I'm not good at that. I only came to VeVe for Marvel and anime. Like I didn't know much about comics. I didn't know much about, like luxury brands and, like Kripkins and stuff. Um, but OMI, I don't really need to think too much. I just need to understand the tokenomics. I can use the data, do some modeling, and I can make like a fair prediction. And as long as the company survives, then OMI should be fine.
Yo, I love that. And the reason, another reason why, beside that, you go, the guy who finds the gold and the guy who sells the shovel analogy, another one that I use when I decide how to spend my money is the ceiling. Okay, like
Mm,
today I can spend $1,000 on a Todd Batman or $1,000 on a million Omi.
mm,
And in 5 years, will Todd ever cross, I don't know, like 20,000?
yeah,
I doubt it simply because of the market cap and the total supply of Todd, like 7,500 NFTs. But in 5 years, will Omi 20x? I think the probability is higher for Omi, right? Because
yeah,
so it's just that game of picking the asset with the higher return on investment for me. So I love your answer, and like hearing you saying that makes me feel very grateful to be learning from you and my guests, simply because the guys you mentioned like Brock and other well-known members in the community, they have either lots of OMI or lots of NFTs or lots of both, right? And my previous guests had thousands of collectibles too. I only have 40 NFTs and 40 comics. I have my OMI bag, which is small, but like guy like me should not be able to have this opportunity to get your perspective like this, because I feel like in order to be trusted and to receive this kind of insight and knowledge, that I should have more. I should have been aware or something like that. That's why I wanted to make these videos and get my ways in to that circle, so that I can learn more from folks like you that I otherwise would not have been able to get to and to learn from. So like when I was hearing you analyzing those questions, it was just awesome. Like I feel amazing. And quick question on the first bear market that Omi survived. Are you talking about, like, were you referring to the one that happened before 2021 that not many people knew about, or which one was that? What was the first bear market that Omi survived that you referred to?
oh yeah, yeah. So so they did an ICO, and that
Mm.
was around about 2018. So throughout
Okay.
that period, there was a serious bear market, and they raised funds in, I believe, Bitcoin, and they had ETH as well, because I remember Reese mentioning ETH. And that was partly why the company pivoted so much, was they had a kind of a credit card. Was it Ecomi One? That was it. So it was like a card that you can use to pay, like do crypto transactions and things. And they scrapped that
Oh.
because they had like funding for it, but because their funding was in ETH and ETH tanked, like it dropped a lot. They basically kind of didn't have enough funding, or it was too risky to move forward. So they scrapped the Ecomi One. So what they did instead is they just focused on VeVe, like just everything on VeVe, and that was probably the better move anyway, um, in hindsight. But yeah, the company has survived worse times than now. Like right now, they're doing really really well, like really well compared to before, where they were having to cancel things and like they didn't have these big partnerships. They hadn't even made any revenue from a product because they had no product. They just did their fund sale. They had private investors, and that's all they had to go off of. And they had to build everything from scratch, and they didn't even know if it was going to work. So yeah, like it's worked out really really well, and because they've survived way worse times in the past, like they're not going anywhere right now. Like they're good.
Yeah. Are you referring to the OMI wallet that they used to sell on a website at one point, or is that even before that?
Oh no, that's a completely separate product. So they've
Oh
got the
wow.
Ecomi Secure wallet. So
Yeah.
that product went through, that was fine. And then they had a couple of other products that never got released. They were
Oh.
like in the process of being developed. So one of them is something called the Ecomi One card. So it's
Huh.
like a credit card, and you can use it to do like crypto transactions. So if you want to go somewhere, you pay with it. And there are other similar products out on the market, so maybe that's why they decided not to do it in the end, because there's already competition there. But yeah, that there's an article for it actually. I think Reese wrote an article or someone, but it never really progressed far because they just didn't have the funding for it anymore.
That's crazy. So at first it was there wasn't VeVe, right? There was Ecomi
Yeah,
that make this credit card, or like this crypto credit card.
yeah,
And because they had the investment in ETH and ETH went down,
yeah,
um, they they just didn't have funding for it anymore. So they pivot to VeVe.
yeah. They focus predominantly all on VV, and they've learned so much from that. So many mistakes that they made back then, they've
Mhm.
made those mistakes, so they're not making them now. So I'm seeing so many new projects making the same mistakes that Ecomi made 4 years ago. So that kind of goes to show you like how far ahead they are, like not just in terms of like progress and the product and stuff, but as a team, they have made the mistakes already. Now they're kind of progressing. A lot of projects out there are only just they're making mistakes right now, and they're gonna have to learn from it. So 4 years worth of mistakes, like they've already learned from it.
Wow. And there was a lawsuit involved too, right?
Yeah. They had a lawsuit back then. That got settled. So that's not really an issue anymore. Um, but that again, that kind of just goes to show, like they made another mistake back then. They paid the price for it, and now they're all good. And since then, they've been very, very careful with everything. Like they're
Yeah.
probably the most compliant NFT project that I can think of by far.
Yeah, 100%. Like I know many new users come in and say, "Oh, David and Dan don't know anything. They cannot get things done." But if you think about it, before these huge IPs decide to partner with VeVe,
Mm,
they're teams of lawyers who are way, way smarter than I am, at least, and who
mm,
have much more resource. For
yeah.
example, like they can do industry reference. They can go ask a different company, "Oh, like, do you know about these Dan David guys?" And they can do background checks and other things like that that we us like regular users would never be able to do. So, and from your story, it sounds like they've been through a lot and have that they have that experience that if you don't go through it, then you would never get it, right?
Exactly.
Wow, that's crazy. Um, so next week the new demo of the VeVeVerse will be coming out. I heard that it's going to be good. So my two-part question again is, what do you think the impact of the VeVeVerse and crypto paying or crypto within the VeVe ecosystem? Uh, how do you think those two new features will have an impact on VeVe and OMI in general?
Yeah. So I think definitely, at least on the VV side, there should be. Okay, so if there's a positive reception, then I think it's definitely going to help the NFT market. On the OMI side, I think it'll have a bit of an effect, but OMI is being dragged down mostly by the overall crypto market. And people probably noticed that, you know, the VV NFTs haven't actually moved down as much as crypto at all. The
Hmm?
Volt went from like, what was it like 3.6K down to about 3.3K. Like it didn't really move much. Whereas OMI, it dropped by like, 40%. Like
Oh yeah,
it's
a
a
lot.
lot. Yeah. So I would say it's not going to have too much of an impact on OMI, but I think it will certainly have a bigger impact on the VV market. Um, but that again just depends on the reception of it. I think overall it will be positive because they know what people like, they know what's good, and if they think what's currently there is pretty good, and even for a first version, then yeah, I'm gonna take their word on it because
Yeah.
David has pretty good taste.
Yeah, at first I had very low expectation for the VeVeVerse simply because I mentioned this in one of the other interviews with the with chat NFT pirates is that, for example, very simple functions like the social feed on the app,
Mm,
it's not, it's terrible, right? But that is like a
yeah,
low hanging fruit, or somebody can say, oh, the search function as well. How
yeah,
can they have that capability to execute
mm,
the VeVeVerse? But based on what I've heard so far, it seems like it's gonna be really good, and I hope that it will give people a vision of what the land benefits and a VeVeVerse will be in maybe 2 years,
yeah,
and maybe incentivize them to start thinking about OMI, because OMI is one of the best routes to get to the VeVeVerse and to get the benefits from it. Um, so I, I think that one common theme that I noticed from talking to you and other past guests is that the majority of you guys started from the crypto space. I don't know much about crypto. I started learning about crypto and NFT last year, so I am a rookie. How do you think you think that the introduction of crypto in the VeVe ecosystem will bring more whales in, or bring more capital in, or the impact will be very insignificant?
yeah. So I came from Omi into VeVe, and I polled it a while back, and about 40% of people who I polled said they came into VeVe from Omi.
Mm-hmm.
And that's significant. That's very significant. Now, I do know a lot of people who don't have any Omi on VeVe, or like very little, like they just didn't really have the need to buy it because it doesn't do anything right now. Um, However, as the crypto market recovers, more people are going to discover Omi. Those people discover Omi, let's say 40% of them go into VeVe. Like that's will be significant numbers.
Yeah.
As Omi and VeVe kind of coincide with the VeVeVerse, if in 2025, like the whole metaverse concept kicks off, then that's going to really, really bring a lot of people into Omi, and a lot of people of those will then go into VeVe, and that's going to it'll be another exponential wave, I believe. Like a whole new wave of users. I think the community will look very different by then. Um, and so yeah, it's very dependent on like the wider crypto market, how that affects Omi, and how many of those people then discover Omi through that. And then those people who discover Omi, how many of those then go through to VeVe? So I think there is going to be a direct impact of the crypto market on VeVe, but through that kind of, indirect route.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I'd say, like at the moment, Omi, the people who are trading Omi, buying Omi, it's not really having too much of an impact on VeVe's user base right now, just because a lot of people who are currently buying Omi, they're people who have been holding Omi for a while. Like I
Right.
don't see too many new wallets being created to buy Omi. So if you look at like the number of Omi wallets, it exploded like back when Omi became known, like early last year, and then
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like flattened out, like became a bit linear. Um, and so, yeah, the number of OMI wallets, like that's always a good metric to look at. And I think that number will increase exponentially when, the metaverse stuff kicks off, VeVeVerse is good, and the market kind of becomes a bit more of a bull market than a bear market as well.
Yeah. So obviously you've been with VeVe for a long time. What are some mistakes that you made, and what are some moves that you look back and you feel really proud about?
Oh yeah. So some mistakes that I made, I mean, the classic ones were, buying something and, you know, holding it for way too long, without realizing, they're going to do more releases of this, or, this thing is going to probably become diluted as the hype dies down. Because obviously I used to FOMO in a lot. Like if something new dropped and prices were high, like I was like, I got to own one, and I would be buying at like peak prices. But I was also hitting like a decent amount of drops back then, which because I held when the bull market in VeVe turned around, those were worth a lot more. And so that's why even though I bought a lot of stuff that was high, because I held a lot of my stuff from like right at the start, I was actually still in profit, surprisingly. So yeah, like just buying stuff and FOMOing in like right after a drop, I don't do that anymore. Like if it's right after a drop, I wait. I'm not going to buy it right now. Now, things that I did well, I would say, I did sell a chunk of stuff like around about January that I didn't really care about. So, I sold like a FA Harley Quinn for like 1.2K or something. Like that's a
Wow.
lot looking back now. And then I used those gems to go buy other stuff. And like that stuff, I'm like, oh, what? I'm happy I did that. And then there was one drop, the Golden Trixie Bunny. I had the full serial killer set. So I got that airdropped, and straight away I sold it for like I think I sold it for like 5K. Like
Wow.
straight. Yeah. And then I
That's
bought it
awesome.
back for I think it was 3K. So I made like 2K for free. And then I sold it again for like 4K. And then I bought it back for like 2K. And then I ended up then selling it in the end for like, I don't know, 700. So, I made like essentially yeah, I mean, I made, how much did I make? Like, I made a decent amount there. Like, I think that's 7K or something. Um, and I'm happy with that, right? Like, and I would, yeah, I was like, you know what? Looking back, because I would never really like actively trade any NFTs, but I was like, let me just experiment with the Trixie Bunny because it's quite scarce, it's new, it was airdropped, it was free, there's nothing for me to really lose. And so I'm like glad I did that. And then I went and spent all those gems on oh, I can't remember. I think I was buying comics or something. Yeah.
Right. Wow. What a journey. Yeah, I'm on the same boat. I feel like, having diamond hand, like people always say, like, hodling is the way to go. But sometimes if you want to stay within the ecosystem for a long time, maybe you need to, well, personally, I've been feeling like sometimes if there are opportunities that I need to take it and flip the NFTs so that I can have at least some capital to play the game in a long run, because I cannot just keep putting fiat into the app. Um, so yeah, that is a very valid point. My next question is: you are very well versed within the crypto NFT industry. Where do you think VeVe will go from here? Maybe let's just start with VeVe in 2023 and VeVe in 2025. What are your expectations and what are your visions of VeVe?
Okay, so next year I think is going to be really fun because next year we're going to have all the new stuff kind of being added, like MCP, OEP. So I think if you're obsessed with prices, you should be expecting much. Like, go on a year long holiday if all you care about is prices. But if you're looking for like fun and features and experiences, next year will be really good. Um, Now 2025, by then we'll have gone through the Bitcoin halvening, um, the the prediction, the forecast is the crypto market will be in a brand new bull run, which is going to be peaking at much higher than the last one. So a lot of people are saying that the next bull run is going to be where Bitcoin hits 100K because it peaked at around about 69K the last
Mm-hmm.
bull run that passed. So what's that going to do to OMI? Like probably a lot because, like I said, as long as the token survives and as long as it's backed by a legitimate you know company or team, etc., then it's going to do well. All the tokens from the previous bull run that survived, they all did really well. So Cardano survived, XRP survived, Neo survived, OMI survived, and because they had a legitimate product attached to it, like it did well. And that's what people look out for is, there are going to be a lot of tokens that just aren't very good and they get washed out, they die. And then the money from that will move into legitimate projects, legitimate tokens. So more people who discover OMI that way, they're then going to discover VeVe. As they discover VeVe, that's going to help the NFTs. But, predominantly that's going to help OMI because OMI is hopefully going to be completely tied to the app by then, fully burning, staking, etc. So I would say, 2025 is, if you care about returns, that's probably going to be a better year than 2023. But 2023, I think the market's just going to probably be down, if not worse. But VeVe is going to still continue to release stuff because, they actually generate real revenue. They're not just relying on a token price.
Right. My last two questions. I noticed that you have been in the crypto space since 2016. You've been through several bear markets now. What is your profit-taking strategy for OMI? I'm not asking about price predictions. Maybe some percentages will be helpful.
Yeah. So for me, because of the way that I kind of diversified and, I tried to protect myself from, what I suspect was going to happen in the market that's happening now. I liquidated a lot of my stuff on VeVe, which is, going to be rediverted into OMI. But a lot of that money from VeVe came through, stuff that I had done for other NFT projects. Profits that I made there, I put back into VeVe and OMI. So my strategy is basically very, very similar. I will continue to dollar cost average up until I'd say, so I wouldn't be looking at OMI price specifically, but I'd be looking to track Bitcoin at key levels. So if Bitcoin touches 69K again, previous all-time high, it stands to reason people are going to want to sell there because that's a previous all-time high. That always happens. And so when Bitcoin's about to hit a previous all-time high, I would look to take a bit of profit out of OMI just because when Bitcoin drops, OMI is going to drop a lot more. But I wouldn't go and sell 100% of my OMI when it happens because that's way too risky. Because we've seen that also OMI tends to do its own thing. Sometimes Bitcoin goes down, but OMI just decides to go up.
Yeah.
So, for me, I do small amounts 5%, maybe 10% at most. But I try and accumulate small amounts that are, that I feel are kind of more likely to be guaranteed. And for me, that's just easier because if it doesn't go as planned, it's fine. Unfortunately, for the trade that I've made and taken, it has pretty much worked out as of, after 2016, because 2016 I made a lot of mistakes, then 2017 actually. So yeah, I'd look to track Bitcoin and the wider crypto market. I wouldn't necessarily be too focused on OMI itself.
Yeah. And my last question is for folks who are new to the crypto NFT blockchain space, what would you recommend them to do so that they can be mentally and educationally prepared? Or, what are some good resources or what are some things that you would recommend people to do, or your best friend or whatever who knows nothing about crypto, NFT, blockchain, but wants to get into the space so that they can best prepare themselves for it?
Yeah. So just to go through a list of things, go to a lot of the real life events like, crypto expos, see which events are happening near you, talk to people there. Get a ledger, make sure you store your crypto on cold storage. MetaMask is okay when you start out, but you don't want to keep too much on there. There is always a risk. Read up about news articles of big projects that failed and why they failed so that you know what to avoid. Because I wasn't around when Mt. Gox happened, but I spent time learning about it. And I realized, oh, wow, a lot of these exchanges can really screw you over. So, do that as well. Spend time understanding, like nowadays, like, smart contracts, you don't have to like learn to code or anything, but understand, what kind of things could be a red flag in smart contracts, because most times people will point it out. So if they say, hey, the smart contract allows the owner to mint unlimited tokens, there's no maximum cap on there. Maybe you want to avoid something like that. Or you want to know how significant something like that is. You want to be able to comprehend that. And then, there are a lot of good YouTube channels out there. I would say for crypto content, Coin Bureau, that's always a good one. That's always a good one to watch. And then, get involved in Twitter spaces of crypto, NFTs, just listen to people. And, if you don't really know what you're doing, start with something simple like Bitcoin or ETH and just understand, what is a blockchain? How does it work? How do transactions work? What are private keys, public keys? How do exchanges work? Decentralized exchanges, the different types of wallets, cold storage, hot storage. And then kind of understand, what type of projects are innovating in this space and which ones have value from, both the consumer perspective, which could be retail and institutional, and, which ones, I guess, are kind of, they're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but it's something that actually adds value to the space. They're not, taking something that already exists and just adding a blockchain on top, because a lot of companies do that.
Yeah. Kay, I really appreciate your time and insights today. This is my first OMI conversation, and I'm so glad that I have you on today, because I don't know about other people, but I learned a tremendous amount in terms of being pragmatic in when we try to set our expectations from Ecomi and the team, because obviously things always happen. Like they can always lose team members and regulations and all those kind of things. And I love your stories on the behind the scene of OMI, the Ecomi One credit card, and the fact that you have been in the space for like, I don't know, 6-7 years now and have so much experience will help a lot of people, I believe. Like you did help me a lot actually, in terms of how to understand things and how to look at things from a long-term perspective, and also to understand the struggles and the challenges that David and Dan and the whole Ecomi team went through since the beginning. So it's been like a pretty mind-blowing conversation to me, and I'm super grateful for it.
Oh yeah, no problem. Anytime.
Yeah. So I hope that I can have you on again some point next year, where we can catch up and see how things change over time.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to it. Like, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Kay. I hope you have a good night. And again, thank you so much.
Cheers.
All right. Bye.
Cool.
That is it, you guys. I hope you have enjoyed the interview. Go follow Kay. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And most of all, subscribe now so that you don't miss out on the actionable and valuable insights, everything about VeVe and Ecomi. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you again next time. Peace.